Hi everyone, hope everyone is well. Welcome to another episode of Enlightened Conversations with myself, Jag Sandhu. Today I am going to be going live with Simran N'golet. She is an artist and a spiritual mentor, so I'm going to wait. I'm just going to invite her along. Let's see what's going on. We're just adding Simran. So before Simran joins, Simran is an artist and a spiritual mentor, and she focuses on helping women open their soul purpose and to go forth and help others as well, and so that they can live their life to the fullest as well and heal along the way. Hi Simran.
Hey,
Can you hear me?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So it's finally great to get you on screen. I'm just gonna share the post and everything. I think we've got people joining and everything. So yeah.
Awesome.
So, how have you been?
I've been great. So many amazing, magical things have been happening lately. So I'm just trying to not burst into flame from the excitement of it all.
So what's been happening? So obviously we've crossed paths just recently, and I know that you have been on the spiritual journey for quite some time, and you've had your trials and tribulations. And I know that we spoke briefly, and did you stay in an ashram? No, was it? You didn't stay in an ashram, did you? You stayed
for a little bit.
You stayed in How did you end up in the ashram?
Okay, so it's kind of a long story short. About 2013, beginning of 2013, I was coming towards the end of a really successful career as a professional makeup artist. And just unfortunately, with an unfortunate turn of events, I live in southern United States, so I was unfairly convicted of a theft-related crime, and unfortunately, but also fortunately, well, it was unfortunate that I was still found guilty of the crime. The jail sentence was waived, but it was still on my record. So I was at this big crossroads, because while makeup artistry was something I was extremely good at, and I was at the verge of my career really taking off with that, I felt this inner call to really connect with spirit. I was very much deep into a spiritual practice, and just the turmoil of that loss, and just what am I going to do now? Like, how am I going to make a living? What am I going to do with my life? Basically, I just had this life crisis in a sense. And so about 3 hours north, there's a Hare Krishna ashram, and so I decided, okay, I'm gonna go there and spend time with them. And I had always been drawn to like Eastern philosophy in general and yoga, and I didn't know much about it, and so I went there and spent time there, and that's where I really learned meditation and yoga, and had a long practice of waking up at 4 a.m. to do like ceremony, like arati, and chanting and kirtan and all of that. And then shortly after, I didn't do the full like initiation. I didn't become a full initiate, but that's actually how I got the name Simran, which I then decided to legally change my name to. And then I came back home to Virginia Beach a little after that, because I felt the call to come back and basically live in the real world. and be around real people to do my to not just do my spiritual practice, but to do the work that I felt called to do. So, which actually before then I had a short stint in Scientology actually before I also came back. So I went from, so it's been really interesting, just my early spiritual practice.
So you've gone from Scientology to Hare Rama Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I went to Hare Nam, Hare Krishna, Hare Nam, Hare Rama, to a little bit of Scientology. I didn't really like get deep into it, but then there's actually like circumstances that I'm actually not legally allowed to talk about with that, but we'll just leave it there. That's like that's how deep it goes. And then I came back to Virginia Beach, and it's really interesting, really wild. So
I love the name Simran because obviously, as you know, the name Simran is like prayer or chant the name of God. So it's a beautiful name. So obviously, did they name you Simran, or did you choose?
Yes, so that's what I was given because I was because at the end, like especially one of my mentors, because during the RT ceremony at 4:30 in the morning, I was just really, especially when I first got there, I was very deep into just the chanting and just how it made me feel, because I was just in this state of just disarray and desperation. So I just said, you know what, like I was just really deep into it. And so 4 months into it, we were talking about like repetition of the holy names. They're like, yes, like you embody like Simran. And I said, you know what, that sounds so so aligned, and I just really embraced that. And then that's how it led to me actually making it my legal name. So
but that's beautiful. So it's almost like you've reinvented yourself. Just you found yourself, but you reinvented yourself on the next level. But when you came back from the ashram into real life, was it difficult to adjust? How did you find it? Did people perceive you differently? Because obviously, as you said, you were a makeup artist who then kind of went into an ashram, and then you've come back to the real world. So did people find a lot of difference in you? How did they react?
Well, fortunately for me, I had started dabbling in like just new age spirituality since about 2009 2010. So when I was in my makeup career, my nickname was actually Oprah. So because I was constantly the like they called me like the motivational speaker, and I always had like crystals in the back of my makeup brush belt that I would wear. So even like my former coworkers, they would always ask me, you know, about spiritual advice, like, oh, how do I get into crystals? How do I get into meditation? Like, how do I, because you always seem so like zen, especially in hectic work days, just dealing with people and the hustle and bustle of retail and the madness and the beast that it is. So when I came back, I was received right the same. No one really thought I was weird because I was already known as the spiritual person of my my group of friends and things like that. But it was really different as far as how I felt in my interaction with life, because I actually found that ashram life just wasn't for me. Just the concept of just like living in a community, wearing a sari every day, eating vegetarian food and having to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and doing having a very regimented practice wasn't for me. I had a lot of respect for it, and it gave me a lot. I'm grateful for it in the sense that it gave me a lot of discipline that I otherwise wouldn't have had to be consistent in my spiritual practice, because it was very much I would just dabble in a little bit of everything all the time, but I didn't really have a lot of growth because I didn't really stick to stick to something long enough, but that allowed me to stick to have some discipline to really get to know who I was and to have a connection with the divine and to
Yeah.
really build my muscles for being able to build my spiritual listening ears.
Yeah.
In that sense. So coming back with that, I had a more well-rounded practice, and it was easier for me to have a more broader idea of what the realm of possibility would be for me, that my life wasn't just contingent on being able to have a job, that my life didn't begin and end with the fact that I almost went to jail and I have a theft related crime that makes me an inhirable person that I'm just going to suffer and die for the rest of my life. It just that's just the rationale that my mind was in at that point. And so coming back, it was just more of, okay, what does life have to have for me now? How can I serve? Because the um ashram was so much about service and service unto others. So I had that service mindset. And so I honestly can't remember how it happened exactly, but it just came up into my mind of, well, I already help people and answer my friends' questions with their spiritual journey. Why not turn this into something that I do, of creating a actual professional practice of helping people do the things that I do? Because in my early spiritual practice, my earliest mentors were Native American, and one of my mentors, she's like a mother to me. I call her Mama D because her name is Darlene. Also Stone Woman, and one of the first things she ever told me when I met her was, "You are a way shower. You are my way shower child." And I'm thinking, okay, what does this way shower word mean? And come to find out, it was people who show others the way to their spiritual practice, to their spiritual life. And I fought it for years. I fought it and fought it and fought it for years, and come to find out as I piece things together that my conviction was actually the universe's way of pushing me into the role of the way shower, because my makeup artist career was actually a distraction, and I was clinging onto it so tightly that in order for me to see what my path was, it had to be taken out of the equation. And unfortunately, because at that time I was so attached to learning my lessons the hard way, it resulted in me almost going to jail. So piecing that together, it was like, oh, okay, so this was in the cards for me all along. And so then that progressed into me doing intuitive readings, doing some consultation, and then as I really got into understanding my soul heritage and honing my channeling abilities, it turned into what you see today, which turned into GetRealWithYourSoul.com and the soul activation intensives and all of that work.
But when, like, you mentioned that obviously the Mama D adopted you and said your name was going to be shower of the way. Sorry, what was it again?
A way shower. She said that I'm a way shower. Yeah.
You're the way shower. But then you said, obviously there was that resistance, that reluctance to leave your life of what you'd known. But what do you think? Why do you think you were clinging on to the old way, so to speak? Because obviously we all know that if we resist too much, the universe does the universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it, has its way of intervening to get us on the right path.
Because at that time, I had it in my head, because at that time in my life, I was probably only like 19, 20 years old at the time, so I was still really young. And so I had it in my mind that that if you didn't work for a company, or if you didn't like have a way to actually be able to see how you were going to do the work, or actually if you couldn't have it like clearly mapped out in front of you, that it wasn't irrational, and that you just couldn't do it. I just had it made up in my mind, and it's like I can't perceivably see myself being in a position to show people the way. Like, who am I? And I had, in doing work in that, I had a lot of baggage from my Christian upbringing because I was very much involved in my church. I mean, when I was in high school, I used to carry a Bible this thick to my school because I thought I was going to win my school to Jesus Christ. Like, so that was like my mission when I was younger, and that was very, but I was a very progressive Christian at the same time. So so I had a lot of baggage with wanting to help people and motivate people, but when it came time to actually to withhold love from people, to especially with the LGBT community, and that's when I was very outspoken and spoke out against that. That actually, no, that's not what we should be doing. That's actually not what Christ called us to do. And so that I caught a lot of pushback, a lot of resistance, and it resulted in me being ostracized from my church community. So I had a very early experience of if you speak your truth, bad things are going to happen to you. Or if you put yourself out there and put yourself in front of people, bad things are going to happen. Because the church that I went to, the youth group that we had, I mean, we had over 600 to 800 kids. So it was a very large scale thing. It wasn't just like a small like youth group. Like, I was a part of really big like organizations at a really young age, and actually would get on stage and like preach to youth. So I was used to, at a really young age, already having experience being on a really large platform. And like going out on missions trips and like preaching in like Mexico or preaching in like Zambia and things like that. So this idea of, oh, you're gonna like be a way shower, and that's actually like part of your life path, and you're actually called to do this. It's that, you know, oh, that means danger. That means that I'm putting myself in harm's way and that I'm going to be hurt. I didn't associate it with that, but then after doing some digging and really evaluating where that resistance came from, that's really what came up for me. There's just this wound of being rejected and being told that you're wrong. And,
I can so relate to that. Obviously, growing up, the slightest thing or the slightest comment can hurt you really deep, but you just then end pressing comments like that, and it niggles away at you over time, which then kind of develops your self-doubts and your insecurities as you get older. But then it's about doing that inner work and peeling away the layers so that the real you can come out. But obviously that's a continuous work in progress for everyone. I mean, even with the work that you're doing now, and you've done tremendously well in the last 2 years, do you still come across those moments of self-doubt, those insecurities, or would you say you've healed from that wound?
I would say it's both. Like, I've healed from it, but I feel like I'm always going to revisit that as I continue to up level, because very recently I've been revisiting it more so because I've always had this fear of, oh, I can't be exposed to too many people because I'm gonna get bashed, I'm gonna get haters. And just within the past year specifically, as I've really been committing to just showing up for myself, showing up for my practice, showing up for my message, and just letting the creations that I have go out there, especially with speaking my truth, because I'm very much a tell it like it is person. I'm not very fluffy. I've never been just the fluffy airy fairy love and light. And so as I've become very outspoken about the overlap of spirituality, particularly in the realm of social justice issues and that intersection, I've been met with a lot of pushback, a lot of loss of connections and friends and things like that. And I've revisited that trigger a whole lot. But the difference is that while I still had those moments where I wanted to withdraw and fear, and it's like, oh, it's not worth it. Oh, it's not worth it. You know, like, people are going to think this, people are going to think that. At the same time, I have a whole nother level of confidence in me now where it's like, okay, I acknowledge that, I see it for what it is, but at the end of the day, they don't matter because they're they're not the people that I'm aligned to connect with and who are connected to my message. And I need to focus on the people that are. And so I've learned to talk myself through it and how to work through it in that process. But I believe that I'm still going to work through that. I still have dug deeper and uncovered a lot of things, especially with resentment behind what it means to me to be famous, and that word famous, because because I have, you know, friends of mine who are very, very amazing writers, amazing authors, have really excellent platforms, and are really great just spiritual mentors who've said, you know, like, I see you going in this direction and doing these great things, and then I feel this visceral gut reaction of like, ew, like, no, I don't want to be that. And it's like I've associated that, oh, if a lot of people know who you are, because that's really all that is, the F word, the famous word, which I still have issues with it, but it's just, if a lot of people know who you are and you're getting your message to more people, oh, that means you're going to forget like where you came from, or you're going to become a jerk. Or so that was a new revelation that I came up with, and so trying to recalibrate that so I can still continue to show up and not associate that.
No, I can completely relate with you on that. And we've got a few people saying hi. We've got Satwinder, hello.
Hi.
Andy, and I think there was Desmond as well earlier. So hi guys, and also Lynn and stuff. So I also, when we spoke previously, you also said to me you actually have followed the works of one of the first famous documented medium psychics, Edgar Sandhu. Is that how you pronounce his surname?
Say that again.
I said you said that you follow the work of Edgar Sandhu. Is it Sandhu or Casey?
Edgar Casey, yeah.
How did you get into that? Because I know you work for the organisation which is named after him, the Association for Research and Enlightenment. So how did you get involved in that? Is that something that you've just joined recently, or was that something that you were involved in before as well?
Before as well. That I actually, well, it's interesting because I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia. So Edgar Casey in the early 20th century, that's where he was led to do his work, where he has about 24,000 documented psychic readings on health. He accessed the Akashic records, but most of his readings were on health. He did things on Egypt, Atlantis, various different ancient civilizations. And I had been an avid visitor of the center for a while, because they have the largest metaphysical library in North America. So they have a library open to the public. You can go and do research specifically on metaphysical topics, as well as bookstore and things like that. And shortly after my career ended with makeup, a really close friend of mine, and I came back to the area, she sent me this email for a job opening. And I was thinking, like, oh, I'm not going to get that job. Like, I was still stuck in the story of I can't pass a background check. Like, oh, like, I have a criminal record now. Like, I can't get a job. Like, I just was in that story. And went in for the job interview, told them my situation. They were like, okay, we like you. We're still going to hire you, basically. Like, and so because I figured that would be the perfect place for me, because they have a massage therapy school, and I was thinking about going there to learn body work. They have one of the best massage therapy schools out there, and people travel all over the world to attend the school. And I figured, okay, I'll just get the admissions information. And then she sent me the job opening, and I applied for the job, and worked there for about a year, and then enrolled into the Casey Riley Massage School, and graduated May of last year. From there, but since I've been there for about 4 years now.
So it's opened up a whole new avenue, and also I suppose you've learned a lot by working there as well, being exposed to things as well. So do they teach other things there as well apart from the massage?
Yes, they have a graduate school for those who have, if you already have a bachelor's degree, for Atlantic University, where they have a program for transpersonal psychology. I know that they do have a few other certificate programs as well for spiritual mentorship. They just started teaching life coaching as well, so they have an annual life coaching certification, as well as hypnotherapy for learning how to do past life regression and advanced hypnotherapy techniques, and also meditation mentorship as well.
So how does it feel when like working in such a institute? Because obviously it's quite, is it, well, as it's world renowned, and obviously it's given you exposure and it's helped you on your spiritual journey as well. So how did it make you actually started work there? I mean, obviously I know you visited the centre before, but how did it make you feel when you actually started work there? You stepped into the place on your first day.
Yeah, so it was incredibly nurturing, just because at that point my work life and my life as a spiritual mentor, it was all in spirituality and health. And so not only just being around coworkers that are like-minded, just having access to the resources as well. And then just my favorite part about it, even to this day, is just the people that come to visit and meeting hundreds, if not thousands of people every day who are coming to visit for classes, for our weekend conferences, for the different seminars, and just making a lot of the connections that I've made. And some of the best friendships that I have in my life have just been from being on staff there and meeting incredible people, whether they're just spiritual seekers or they're other practitioners, or even like authors and speakers who have become just wonderful friends and mentors and people that I'm just so blessed to have in my life. And it's also right across the street from the beach, which is also a plus as the weather is getting warmer. So just being in this very healing environment for me is incredible. And not to mention I'm also a book junkie, so having access to a bookstore and a library all the time, that's all in metaphysics, is incredible.
That sounds great, especially
yes.
like being in that kind of environment where you're with like-minded people. You don't feel weird. I suppose if you were in your being in high school, did you ever feel like you were different from the others?
Oh, absolutely. They actually, it's so funny you mentioned that, because in high school they actually made up, because I know in the US we have what's called senior superlatives, where people get voted, like best dress and like best eyes or whatever. They actually made one up. They made one up for me where they actually created one for me that was most likely to start their own religion.
Really?
Yes. So they actually created one for me that was most likely to create their own religion. So yeah. So yeah, I definitely
crazy things.
Yeah.
No, you're also an artist. So do you write music, paint? What do you do? Or do you do a mixture?
I do a mixture of a lot of things. It's actually funny because up in when I was in high school, I've had my hands in a lot of different things. I was really into graphic design. That's originally what I went to college for. So I was heavy into graphic design, but actually up until January of this year, I got back into painting because I had received this, I guess you could call it a gift, but called Galactic Light Language, where I started writing these symbols that had these profound energy frequencies that I could feel coming off of the paper. So I have different paintings that I'm working on now with these different symbols and characters on them with different healing intentions on them. So I draw those a lot. I have a journal just for myself that I draw them out with, and then whole bunch of canvases. Actually, right in this corner, I have like 10 canvases that still need to be worked on that are just like popped in the corner, and like my space has just become overrun with canvases and like drawing paper. But there's that. I've always been into like interpretive dance and movement, which I don't show a lot on social media, but I do a lot of just like free movement and things like that. So just really lots of different forms of art, but as far as primarily my art is in acrylics and drawing.
Obviously, you're a very versatile person. Obviously, you've you just mentioned you wanted to do graphic design, then you went into makeup, and now you're doing the whole spiritual stuff, you're into metaphysical stuff, Eastern philosophies and everything. But it's like, if someone was to actually ask you to describe yourself, or say, what is Simran all about? How would you describe yourself?
How would I describe myself? That is so that's always, it's so funny because I always hate questions like that, because it's like I can't. It's like,
let's change it.
I know, it's always like, because it's like, how do I do that?
Where do you? I mean, obviously you what with you're doing a lot of different things. Okay, so are you kind of putting different parts of whatever you've learned into your practice? Like, obviously you working one-on-one with people, you're also doing group stuff with people. Okay, but do people have a lot of questions around themselves? Like, so for example, if someone needed clarity, I mean, some people, I just find that a lot of people recently, I don't know if you found this, there's a lot of issues around self-love, about their own identity. Okay, how would you explain about self-love to somebody, for example?
Definitely, because for me, the number one thing, because that's actually really interesting, because the number one thing that I always tell everyone is funny, because it's like, get real with your soul, you know. It's because it's all about truly embodying who you are at a soul level. And so when people are having issues, especially around self-love, it's like, what is your truth? What is it what is it within you at a soul level that is yearning to be pulled forward? What is it that you've been hiding and that you've been holding back and suppressing? And what are the reasons behind that? Like, what is it that is begging to be self-expressed? Because oftentimes when we have unexpressed energy, energy that we've been suppressing, that shows up in sometimes it can be like health blocks, health issues, or even just being inhibited in life, not being able to get where we want to go or achieve the goals that we want. And so it's really interesting, because that's always what I tell people. It's like, you just need to get real with your soul. Like, what is it that you want? Like, really tap into that realness. Like, what is it that's not being fully embodied and expressed, and where's the fear behind that? Because it always boils down to fear. And it's usually, and of course it's always usually a fear of what other people are gonna think, fear of rejection, because duh, we all want to be accepted. Even the things that we were talking about earlier about stepping into the way shower, 90% of that is fear of rejection. And so making the adjustments and doing the evaluation, a lot of what I call like soul archaeology, because so much of the work that I do is centered in the galactic being, like what your soul lineage is, your soul group. So diving in and doing that spiritual soulful archaeology, and seeing where that comes from, and really getting aligned with your truth, and really getting into the practice and the habit, and giving yourself permission to really let as much of that pull you forward, and be what you really are, not really be what you really are, but because that is what you are, but to let that show through in the most unadulterated way possible, because you can't not love yourself then when you become more and more unapologetically yourself. The more self-expressed you are, then the more aligned you are, and the more aligned you are, the more aligned opportunities show up for you, and the more life just works for you. So
yeah.
In a nutshell, which wasn't really a nutshell, that was like, I can be really long-winded.
It's a good explanation, because I remember in the group you were like, do you know where you belong? And I was like, I have no idea where I belong. So obviously I still need to do that bit of soul searching on the galactical scale, because obviously there's like, I've never really come across like the whole galactical concept of our soul purpose. How did you come across that? Did you come across that working at the Institute, or how did you find out where you belonged, and how did you learn about it?
That's a good question. So it's a little bit of both. I've always been connected to more of the galactic concepts of spirituality. From a young age. I just hadn't made the connection yet, because anyone who's been following me for a long time knows that I am a unapologetic sci-fi fan, sci-fi nerd. I love science fiction. So I've always been connected with science fiction and astronomy. Especially in school, that was the science that I loved to study in high school. And I was always drawn to the spiritual concept of coming from the stars, being a person of the stars, and the whole concept of the universe being described as God was very fascinating for me. And so in the earlier stage of my spirituality, as I was kind of moving out of traditional Christianity, I had come across the theory of star seeds. And so, Googling it, I'm like, oh, like, what is that? And so this was pre-2012, so there were a lot of people who were like, oh, 2012, like the star seeds and raising the consciousness of the earth. And it's like, oh, raising the consciousness of the earth, like, oh, that's up my alley. And so as I was Googling and watching like YouTube videos and doing all the cute little quizzes of like, are you a starseed? To find out. And like, of course, they all were like, yes, you are. Like, or, oh, you're highly this. And so then that led me to dive deeper and learning more about that. And then as I grew my intuitive abilities and started channeling, I started getting messages from the Galactic Council and all these like celestial beings, and started learning about these different planets and other galaxies and other solar systems, and started working with mentors and taking Akashic record programs as well, so that I could round it out in a way that I could be a practitioner of that work. And just continuing to do that work. And as well as I dove deeper into the Casey work, he actually talks about in his readings, he calls them planetary sojourns, and talks about how souls experience living in different planets in our solar system outside of Earth. And that was very validating to the things that I was experiencing as well. My soul group and my starseed type and my soul lineage from where I came from, and how that correlated so much with who I was. And so that was extremely validating with that. And I was gonna say something and then I lost it, so hopefully it'll come back.
You've kind of frozen on my screen. I don't know why, but
uh-oh.
It's all right. We'll just carry on talking anyway.
Okay.
This happens when you go live. Tech issues always happen. But
exactly.
No, but that's really, really interesting, because it's almost like you're kind of thinking out of the box, and then it goes to show that there's a lot more out there than what we're aware of, and it's always about continuous learning. So how did you get into the learnings of Akashic records? Did that interest come from the galactic side of things, or was that something that you were interested in from before?
With the Akashic records, it's a little different for me, because I would spontaneously in my sleep, because I was already very highly sensitive,
Yeah.
would kind of go into them. I just didn't know what they were called. And then with Edgar Casey, working with the Akashic records, I was familiar with it, but my interest didn't really peak until after I started working at the center, when I met a girl who did Akashic record readings, and she talked a lot about soul groups, and I had sat down and got a session with her, and just learned so much about a lot of things that I had already known, but it was still, once again, very validating. And so that's when I really said to myself, okay, I really need to dive deeper into this and really learn more about this and really incorporate this into my own practice, and not just like my professional practice, but my own spiritual practice. And so then that led me to, in the beginning, it led me to a modality called soul realignment, by a woman named Andrea Hess, who had a very structured protocol for how to read Akashic records for people. So I started with that, and then went my own way. A little, and then eventually outgrew it in a sense, and spanned out from it.
So I suppose you kind of adapted it to your own way of working, really, with all your other learnings, haven't you? So what are you wanting to do? I mean, right, are you actually like now speaking? Are you doing like are you speaking at events now, or where do you want to take your work in the next year, would you say?
It's so interesting you've said that, because so many people have said, I see you speaking at events really soon. It's like so, but not yet. It's not planned, but I'm not opposed to that being a thing. I definitely have a book on my heart that I want to share. But as far as where I want to take my work, ultimately my main goal is, because I find soul lineage and just the whole concept of starseed so important and so helpful for people to know in their own spiritual journey. But the issue is that it's so convoluted right now, where it seems so extremely woo-woo and out there that it goes over most people's heads. So my biggest goal right now is to really simplify a lot of these concepts in a way that can be easier to understand, easier for people to learn how to explore for themselves. Because not everybody wants to take an Akashic Record certification course, to really learn about it. But they still want to really learn how to read for themselves. So really just beginning to develop programs and things for people just to use for their own self-discovery. But other than that, I definitely do have a book in the works, and it's just really about making a lot of these really abstract concepts a lot more simple for people to digest and to be able to use. But I'm still, as far as what that really is going to look like in the bigger picture, it's still pretty open. It's in a evolution process right now that hasn't quite settled. The dust hasn't quite settled on it yet.
It sounds really exciting, especially about the book.
Yeah.
Is that one of the lifelong things that you wanted to do?
Honestly, no. It's really yes and no. It's one of those things I never saw myself writing a book hasn't always been a strength, but it's something I've definitely wanted to do and have felt like I've been needing to do for the past 2 years now, especially just being able to get a lot of my message and just my personal story, more so the adversity part of it out there to more people, definitely. And with the evolution of how publishing has changed, that's become something that's more accessible for me to do now. So it's definitely exciting, and it's definitely very scary as well, and something that's super out of my comfort zone. But I've learned that that's where, at least for me personally, that growth is the most profound for me, is when I do full force dive into those things that are super, super scary.
The other thing I was going to ask you is, obviously coming from obviously for someone like me, coming from an Indian background, and for yourself coming from an Afro-American background, stepping forward with your spirituality, how have people taken to that?
It's been interesting. It was very difficult for my family, because my family, you're either a teacher, a college professor, or you're a minister. Like my grandmother is a minister, her brother is a minister, her youngest sister is a minister, my mother's brother, so and then one of my first cousins. So so religion, especially Christianity, was very much entrenched in my family. So, and because when I was younger, I was very much headed on to that path, it was very much a shock for them, especially when I decided I was just going to stop going to church. And I just found, for me personally, Christianity just wasn't the path for me, as far as just going to church. And I still have a relationship with Jesus. Like, he's very much a part of my spirituality, but just the religious part of it didn't resonate. So when I went from, wanting to win my school for Jesus Christ and carrying this like 2-inch Bible to school, to, oh, I don't want to go to church anymore, and I'm just going to not be a leader at my church anymore, and I'm going to start meditating and I think, what was it? It started when I got a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, and and my family, my mother not so much, but my grandmother and my immediate family, they were just kind of like, what's going on? Like, and
it's like horror.
Yeah, it's just that. But the only person that really had an extreme reaction was my grandfather, and unfortunately we're still no longer in speaking terms, just because it did kind of progress into something that almost turned violent with him, just with his really strong views. But and that was really difficult for me. But for the most part, now that it's well over like 12 years now, it's well over 12 years now, they now have gotten past the, oh, this must be a phase thing, and so they're a lot more accepting of it. My grandmother, actually, we have conversations about spirituality all the time, and so she's more understanding of it and receptive to it now. My mother, she's always been really open and receptive, so she's never had an issue. But as far as friends go, it was just like my friends from church that, stopped wanting to hang out with me, or they would only invite me to hang out if they were trying to like lure me back to a church event to get me to reconvert or something like that. But that was what it was. It's whatever, that's their path. But as far as the secular friends that I had, it was very like well received. I've always been eclectic, and I think part of it too was when I was very much into Christianity, I was very liberal anyway, so, and very open. So it was just, like that made, to, if anything, my friends were saying that made more sense for me. So
like you finally have found where you really belong, so to speak.
Exactly.
and it's an ever learning journey as well, which I think a lot of people, which I'm sure you'll agree, which a lot of people don't understand that. But I was going to ask you something. You've also started like a membership up, haven't you?
I did, yes.
What is your membership all about? Because I know you're teaching lots of different things, but if people wanted to join your membership, what kind of, like the Soul Warrior Circle membership, what kind of things would they learn?
Yeah, so, and it's so very much in its infancy, but basically my intention for the Soul Warrior Circle, which is housed on Patreon, for those who are familiar with the Patreon platform, it's just all about really having practical, I want it to be, my vision for it is to be a practical spiritual toolbox of just where I share some spiritual tools and things that I've learned throughout my journey, so that I can't talk, so that people can have very easy to implement strategies and practices to use in their spiritual journey. So far I have I'm working on a light language activation library of tracks where I'm speaking light language for people with different intentions. I think right now the one that I have is for like chakra balancing. I just did a Master Your Manifesting Power masterclass that actually teaches a really practical way of learning how to find your unique manifesting process that a lot of other teachers don't really teach. I'll be going into sharing different practices. Right now I have a monthly group reading that I do where I'm just using my intuitive gifts just to kind of forecast the month. And we're kind of doing a shift where we're going to be, where all the resources that are created are going to be based off of that group reading that for the beginning of the month. And that's always the first Wednesday of the month. And and so it's a growing organism. So it's every month we'll be adding new things there, but ultimately it's just going to be a big spiritual toolbox for people. And there's different tiers to fit every budget. So the basic budget is $5 a month, which gets you the trainings, the master classes, and all the members only group readings and things like that. But there's some higher level tiers for people who want added support, where you can get discounts off of one-on-one services. And then there's also a membership tier where you can get a free 30-minute reading with me every month. So there's something for everyone, wanting to be accessible and practical, and also very versatile as well. So that is
good. Obviously, it's away it's away from like your normal social media like Facebook. What made you put the group on the Patreon platform?
Yes, so for those who are watching that don't understand the context, I had another group called the Progressive Starseeds and Change Agents, and where I really wanted to talk about the concept of starseed spiritual development, but also having a safe container for just like social justice issues as well. And a lot of the reasoning behind the closure of that was just that it was an energy leak to have both groups. I just couldn't do both. And I wanted to just really have a place where it was people who wanted to be there, and it's just the way that I would have had to moderate the other group, I just couldn't do it. I would have had to have like people on staff to do it, just with the boundaries that I wanted to have in place for it to also not just be a good container for good discussion, but also a space, not a space place, but a safe space for black, brown, and indigenous people of color as well. And it just wasn't sustainable for me, and just but so I focused more on that group just because I wanted to have a space for people to be able to get really solid resources and really good mentorship who otherwise can't afford to get a 3-month coach or to do like an intensive. And so through the work that I do with my scholarship program and the Soul Warrior Circle, I wanted to really have a way to be available to everyone, because I do feel like spiritual mentorship, we're in a paradigm where I don't think we as spiritual practitioners should take vows of poverty to be able to do the work that we do, and to just give and be depleted, but to be able to do it in a way that's sustainable for us as well, but to be available for everyone else, to be able to have access, or as many people as possible to have access to. So through my scholarship program that I award free coaching, free intensives, and programs like that, as well as my Soul Warrior Circle.
It's your way of giving back to those.
Exactly.
You've mentioned manifesting as well. How would you do your manifesting compared to others?
So one of the things that I notice with law of attraction and manifesting is that a lot of what is taught doesn't necessarily honor a person's unique blueprint for manifesting, because what a lot of people don't realize is that like we were talking about star seeds earlier, is that how people have, you know, a place in which their soul originated when it was created. You're also wired with a specific set of characteristics that govern how you're uniquely created to manifest your reality when you're in a body on Earth. And what a lot of people, there's tons of manifestation courses going on, and I actually resisted this topic for a really long time, because it's like I didn't want to be another like law of attraction manifester type person, because I do feel like being completely 100%, I call it like I see it. There's a lot of people jumping on the manifestation bandwagon because it's profitable, and not because that's really what they're passionate about. And I didn't want to be another one of those people. But in my work with Akashic Records and looking into people's soul blueprints and expanding my education on that, I've learned that there are a lot of unique spectrums, in a sense, that determine how people are wired to manifest. So there's some people who they can take a manifesting course, and the teacher will say, hey, do your vision board, and you know, make a board on Pinterest and put all the things that you want on there to symbolize. But if that person isn't wired to be an outcome, which is what that leans on, no matter how hard they try, they're not gonna meet the goals that they want. And oftentimes, you know, especially with money manifestation in particular, there's this phrase that's like I can't remember it, but there's just a lot of shaming on the other person especially when it comes to money. If they don't meet their money goals, it's like, oh, you just didn't believe hard enough, or oh, you just didn't say your affirmations, or clear enough of your blocks or journal, which in a lot of cases is absolute like BS. Like, it's just not true at all. And it's just that program and that book and that philosophy is based on the author's manifesting blueprint, and it just so happens that they were able to master that, and so they're teaching what they learned based on their own manifesting blueprint. And so I'm very big on personalization, and just really putting out resources and information that really help people tap into what works for them versus what somebody else says, oh, this worked for me, so this should work for you. And if it doesn't work for you, you're not trying hard enough. It's like, hold on for a second. No, like, just like we all have unique fingerprints, right? We're all wired uniquely in that same respect as well. So I kind of started a precursor to that recently, where I talk about how you are wired to stay motivated in your manifesting process, and also how to shift your vibrational state, because there's two leanings that you can have. There's process and outcome, and then there's consistency and variable as well. So
sounds interesting.
It's very interesting.
I've learned very, very different from what I've learned. Because I think some people think, oh right, they just because they're in the zone, they've written affirmation, they can manifest things easily. But what I've found is that sometimes you need to look at your beliefs and your thought process. And once you've actually worked on your thought process around a particular area, like say, for example, money, that's when things are shifting. Is that what you find?
I find there's that. There's the thought processes as well. There's a lot of different aspects to that. There's also the beliefs. There's also learning how you relate to other people. So I found that there's also learning whether you're similar, whether you relate to people through similarity or whether you relate to people through difference. Whether you interact to life from an external perspective or going within, which is doing the belief work. We mentioned like through process, which is the actions, and through the journey of where you're trying to go, or outcome, which is like the vision boards and things like that, which is the destination. So there's about 7 different aspects to that. And the frame of reference that I work with, but it's absolutely the belief process too, and it's just so unique to the individual. And while you can look at other people, like you can look at actual systems, like the courses and the books, and I don't discount those at all. Like I don't want anybody watching to think that I'm against like buying books on manifesting or taking manifesting courses. It's just I'm not against it at all. I've purchased many that have changed my life in that regard, but it's just knowing that if you're in a rut and you're feeling like something's not working, it's not necessarily that you're doing something wrong, or that way is that the only way. You need to kind of have an open mind that there just might be something that's just not in alignment to your workup and to your energy.
It comes back to what is in alignment with you and what works.
Exactly.
It's not just because it works for one person, it may not work for another. It's not one fix.
Exactly.
So
exactly. It's just that one track concept of like, oh, this is the way, or oh, like this worked for me, so if you do it the way that I did it exactly, it's going to work for you, which it's complete. That's complete BS. So
yeah. But when you started, the other thing I wanted to ask you is, when you came back and you started the whole spiritual business or working with others, what kind of people are drawn to you? Because I know you work mostly with females. What kind of individuals have coming to you? Or who do you help empower?
Yeah, so it's kind of shifted a bit, but it's it was never consciously, like I never consciously set out like I'm going to help this specific person, outside of just I want to attract people who are aligned with what I do and are willing to do the work to get to where they want to go. Outside of that, I was a lot more open. But for the most part, I do attract a lot of healers and coaches, particularly aspiring healers and coaches. Up until recently, as I've been more consistent about putting myself out there, I've been attracting more established coaches, healers, and teachers into my practice. But I would say a good chunk are aspiring coaches who want to be coaches. They have most of their stuff set up, but they don't have like a regular clientele necessarily, and they're still trying to like get into that and still trying to figure out like what their calling is in that realm. So it's a ratio. So in the coaching bubble that I do attract, that's mostly what I get. And then outside of that, I get mostly spiritual seekers, nurses, social workers, I already said nurses, doctors, like like restaurant servers. So just a lot of general spiritual seekers who just want to learn more about themselves spiritually. And
are they like female, or do you get males coming to you as well? Because obviously, I what I found is like there's a lot of females who are coming more into the whole. They're becoming more awakened on a spiritual level, but also at the same time, there are a lot of men who are becoming more spiritually awakened, or I would say men who have been spiritually aware for a long time, but they're actually stepping forward without fear of being judged or criticized for their beliefs.
Right, right. And it's interesting because while I don't market my work to women, I don't get a lot of men. I think in the, I want to say like the 3 years that I've been doing this work, I've only ever had 4 male clients.
Any, sorry?
I've only ever had 4 male clients. So,
Really?
yeah. So, I don't know why. I'm not opposed to working with men. I just don't tend to attract men to my practice. So, yeah.
That's
I've like,
fine.
yeah,
I've
I've never really thought about it though. So,
I'm just interested because I've come across some coaches who will purely just work with women. There are some who will work with both sexes.
right, right.
Um, but they're not. Some are a lot more open than others. So I just was wondering because sometimes it could be that. Do you find that some females are a lot more they're more like they have more of a masculine energy than a feminine energy, and some women have more feminine energy than the masculine energy?
Absolutely.
And that's probably the same with men as well. So again, it comes to being open and trying to bring that balance in, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah, because that's actually something that one of my male clients, who actually is a really good friend of mine. He's actually the husband of one of my best friends, but has worked with me before, and I know that's like one of the biggest struggles that he has because he's very sensitive. Like he's like the textbook definition of an empath, but he's wanting to get into spiritual circles and spiritual community, but finds it's predominantly female. So it's just difficult for him to navigate as well. And I'm not someone who specifically markets to women specifically, but I just tend to attract a lot. But I do experience both masculine and feminine energy even in all my female clients, where it's just more dominant with either or. But I've never thought about that. Like now I'm like really thinking about it. It's like
sorry, it's just
it's like
question, like,
oh no
to ask you, you said you've had mentors who are Native American Indians. Did you ever go through the sweat lodge ceremonies or the sweat lodge experience? How did you find that? How did you get into it?
That's so funny you say that because I've never been through the sweat lodge experience, but one of my really good friends, who'll probably be watching this later, she hosted a sweat lodge with because one of the things that's because my mentor, she left the community and she relocated to Colorado, but she passed the torch off to a few designated people in our area. And one of the things that we do is we'll fly out teachers from different places. And we just recently had an event with a Mexica. I don't think he's a shaman. I'm probably not correct about this, but from Mexico. And he led a sweat lodge, but unfortunately it was around the weekend of my mother's birthday and I just missed it. But when he comes back, I'm going to. So I haven't actually done the sweat lodge personally, but a lot of friends of mine have. But I've taken place in a lot of different practices as well. Like before Darlene, my mentor, left, she taught me how to call in the 4 directions in the tradition, because she's Cherokee. She's actually part Dutch, Cherokee, and Chickasaw, and so she taught her tradition of how to do the 4 corners to a few people before she had moved. So I was fortunate to be passed on that wonderful gift. And there was also a water ceremony that we would do once a month during the new moon called the Nibiwabo. And it's a beautiful water ceremony that has chants and specific prayers to heal the water because of the pollution and things like that. It's actually not allowed to be videotaped. It can't be shared on the internet. It's only through word of mouth. And so there are those 2 traditions that I've had that have been passed to me personally, that I just hold so much reverence for, and they're so special to me because that was just the start of my journey. And
that's wonderful.
So wonderful. And but no, I haven't had a chance to do Sweat Lodge yet, but I will very soon by the end of the year, so I'm excited for that. So
come back and tell us about that experience.
I will have to.
Now we're going to be coming up to a close, so if people wanted to get in touch with you, how could they get in touch with you, Simran?
Yep, so you can click on the my profile and you can follow me there. Also, you can type in my main Facebook page, which is Get Real With Your Soul, where I do most of my live streams there. I have a website that's getrealwithyoursoul.com, where you can get on my email list so you don't miss any of my any new content that I put out. I have like different videos, and you can check out my services, my scholarship program. And then Patreon, which is the home of the Soul Warrior Circle, which is patreon.com/Get Real With Your Soul. I'm on Instagram, which is all my handles are Get Real With Your Soul. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Patreon, and my website. I don't use Twitter or Snapchat, so it's too much for me. I can't be confined to 140 characters. So
that's absolutely fine. And not only that, I suppose it comes back, as you said, to managing your energy as well.
Exactly. So that's all the places you can find me. So
great. Well, thank you very much, Simran. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So next time, hopefully, we can get you back and talk about starseeds a bit more and go a bit more in depth.
Absolutely. I would love to.
Great. Okay, then. Thank you. And I'll speak to you soon.
All right. Bye.